Welcome back to the Daily Dose, my friends, coming at you with the pop collar today. Why? Because we are on the last day of the week. We're looking at day number 287 today. My collar's not starched very well, so it's not staying popped too good. Sorry about that. Hey, like I said, day 287. We are going through the book of Acts. We are at Acts 17 and 18. That's where we're at today, Acts 17 and 18. We've also got Psalm 127 on the menu for today. So let's just jump right in and see what we're looking at, right? So Paul is continuing on his missionary journey with Silas, right? We saw how Barnabas and John Mark kind of dipped out. They sailed off to Cyprus. They went to go do their own thing. And Paul ends up taking Silas, and they go off and they go visit some of the churches and they go do their thing. So first we read about them in Thessalonica, okay, beginning of chapter 17. It says, when Paul and his companions had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. Okay? So it says he was proving, which implies that it's possible for that to be proven. It's possible to prove that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead, right? And I think that was a big stumbling block for Jews when Jesus was alive, especially leading up to the crucifixion. The Jews were thinking that their Messiah was going to be a political leader, right? Somebody who would help to overthrow Roman rule. And how could he do that if he was dead, right? So I think that was a stumbling block to a lot of the Jews. So that's one of the things Peter goes on to reason about and to explain. But notice, he's not just going out into the streets preaching. He's going into the synagogues, right? He's going into their places of worship. And that is where he is teaching. And that is where he is preaching. He's not just randomly doing it out in the street somewhere. Not to say that he didn't, right? But his custom seems to be when he gets into a city, he goes to their place of worship. And that's where he starts. So from there, he goes on to Berea, okay? And in verse 10 it says, as soon as it was night, the believers sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. On arriving there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. Again, as was his custom, right? Now, the Berean Jews were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the Scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. Okay, so that's interesting. We've got a distinction between these Jews and the Jews from Thessalonica. Apparently, these Jews were of more noble character, we're told, right? They received the message with eagerness, and they examined the Scriptures every day to test and see if what Paul said was true. Friends, that is key. Whatever it is that you are doing for church, wherever you're going for church, whatever pastor you are putting yourself under for teaching and for edification, right? You do not need to be listening to them blindly, believing everything that they say, because we are told that wolves will come in sheep's clothing to deceive, right? Friends, you, me, we all need to be in our Bibles, in the Word, every day, making sure that what we're hearing and learning about on Sundays or Wednesdays or whenever it is that we go to church, making sure that what is being taught is biblical and scriptural and that nobody is pulling the wool over our eyes, right? We have to be diligent to do that, just like these folks were. The next section is about them in Athens, okay? While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols, okay? So Paul's in Athens, he's waiting for some companions to get there, and he's greatly distressed because he sees that the city is full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. Okay, so now we read about him being in the synagogues, but not just the synagogues. Now he's out in the marketplace talking with whoever he can find, right? And then at verse 22 it says, Paul stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, people of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious, for as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription. It said, to the unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship. So Athens, as I understand it, was a place of thought and reasoning. It was a place of thinking, right? It was a place of knowledge. And they also had many idols, many different gods, the pantheon of Greek gods. They had a god for almost everything, apparently. So they had these different idols all over the city, and there were different inscriptions on some of the various statues for idols. And they made up a statue to honor any gods they may have missed. So like they make this one statue, this altar, and the inscription says, to an unknown God. So they're like, there's probably gods out there that we haven't thought about or haven't learned about or don't know about yet. And so this is for them, right? And so Paul is like, dude, you're ignorant about the stuff you worship. Like you're worshiping this unknown God. You don't even know him. Let me tell you about who this guy is, who this God is, who this Messiah is, who this Jesus is. Let me tell you about this God that you guys know nothing about, who happens to be the one and only true, real God. Okay? But anyways, from there we move on to some time Paul spends at Corinth. It says, after this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker, as they were, he stayed and worked with them. Every Sabbath he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. Okay, so here, again, we see Paul going to the synagogues, trying to reason with and persuade the people. We also learned that Paul was by trade, apparently, a tent maker. Okay? Paul was involved in tent construction. He runs into some other people that are involved in the same profession, makes friends with them, and joins up, right? They work together. So then we read about Priscilla, Aquila, and Apollos, okay? So starting at chapter 18, it says, Paul stayed on in Corinth for some time. Then he left the brothers and sisters and sailed for Syria, accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. They arrived at Ephesus, where Paul left Priscilla and Aquila. He himself went into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. When they asked him to spend more time with them, he declined. But as he left, he promised, I will come back if it is God's will. Then he set sail from Ephesus. So he takes Aquila and Priscilla with him, leaves them there, and then he leaves to continue on about his business. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the Scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with great fervor and taught about Jesus accurately, though he only knew the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. So here we've got this guy, Apollos, who comes along, and he's preaching out of the knowledge that he's got. And Aquila and Priscilla are like, you got a thing going on there. You've got it, but here's a few things we can clarify for you. So they appear to kind of team up with him and take him under their wing and train Apollos up and teach him a little bit. So they kind of become a team after Paul leaves. So that's pretty much where we leave off for today, y'all. But hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your support. And hey, until we meet again, deuces.